No other movement has peacefully revolutionized the world except Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi's non-violent resistance techniques, to which he gave the name Satyagraha, derived from the Sanskrit words Satya meaning truth and Agraha meaning holding firm to. As Gandhi said, truth implies love and firmness engenders and therefore serves as a synonym for force. I thus began to call the Indian movement Satyagraha, that is to say, the force which is born of truth and love or nonviolence. Deemed a moral force, this theory recognizes the humanity of the opponent and attacks the positions of the person, not the individual. The goal, therefore, is to convert, not defeat the opponent. Over time, Gandhi's nonviolent principles evolved and have proven to be the only method of achieving long-lasting peace. The Satyagraha theory has impacted and inspired individuals to embrace the benefits of moral and soul force and has brought forth political and social change in many parts of the world. In the late 16th century, Europeans in competition to control the seas were conquering lands in the western and eastern hemispheres. On December 31, 1600, Queen Elizabeth I signed a 15-year charter for the Honorable East India Company, who negotiated a commercial treaty with the Mughal Emperor Jahangir of India. The trading company transformed into an administrative power when Governor-General Robert Clive defeated the Nawab of Bengal in the 1757 Battle of Plassey. With a greed for more land, aided by the decline of the Mughal Empire, the company selectively allied and conquered until most of the subcontinent was under their control. Exploitation of the Indians led to an unsuccessful, violent freedom revolt, the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, resulting in the demise of the East India Company and the Crown's direct rule over India. By 1850, thousands of Indians immigrated to the British colonies in South Africa under indentured servitude. Classified as colored, they were subject to a series of discriminatory laws. Gandhi was born to an upper-class family in India in 1869. Exercising his privileges, Gandhi traveled to London where he became an attorney and enjoyed the rights Queen Victoria had promised to all British subjects regardless of race. In 1893, he accepted an offer to represent the Indian community in South Africa. Upon his arrival, Gandhi experienced discrimination for the first time when he was thrown out of a first-class compartment. Gandhi pledged to fight prejudice and formed the Natal Indian Congress in 1894, and started his weekly publication, Indian Opinion, in 1903. Being a loyal British subject, Gandhi volunteered as a stretch-bearer in the Boer War of 1906.
He came so close to all the fighting and the killing and the violence that a war is all about. And when he saw all this happening right in front of him, he got so repulsed by it that he said there has to be some different way of resolving these conflicts.
Gandhi was constantly trying to discover himself by studying both Hindu and Christian religious literature, as well as many philosophers' writings such as Leo Tolstoy, Henry David Thoreau, and John Ruskin. In the following years, Gandhi integrated all of his knowledge, research, and experiences from the East and West into a new philosophy of revolution, Satyagraha, nonviolent resistance. I discovered in the earliest stages that pursuit of truth did not admit of violence being inflicted on one's opponent, but that he must be weaned from error by patience and compassion. The opportunity to try his technique came about in 1907 when the Black Act was issued by General Smuts, requiring Indians to carry registration cards, increased taxes, and did not recognize any non-Christian marriages. The Indians were also restricted from moving to other South African states from Transvaal. The nonviolent protest against this injustice went on for many years, in which Satyagrahis were beaten, jailed, and even killed, but they never struck back, holding firm to their philosophy. Finally, in 1914, the Indian Relief Bill was passed, recognizing non-Christian marriages and repealing the 3-pound tax, satisfying the Indian community. By the time Gandhi returned to India in 1915, Satyagraha had been tested and had triumphed over prejudiced laws. The 21-year stay in South Africa had transformed the once British-styled lawyer into a simply dressed saint. Indians were ready to follow Gandhi in the Satyagraha movement using negotiations, protest meetings, strikes, fasts, and communication through flyers and pamphlets. The passage of the Rowlatt Bills in 1919, which imprisoned people suspected of disloyalty, infuriated all Indians. Adding fuel to an already raging fire, General Dwyer fired bullets at unarmed people at Jallianwala Bagh, killing hundreds. In response, the country joined Gandhi when he launched his first all-India non-cooperation movement in 1920, boycotting anything British. Though it was effective, Gandhi suspended the Satyagraha movement after 2 years due to a small violent incident. Despite the Satyagrahis' efforts, the British government continued to exploit Indian resources and tax them mercilessly. One such law was the 1882 Salt Acts, which made obtaining a necessary and abundantly available commodity, salt, a great burden for the poor laborers who needed it most. When Gandhi received a negative response from Lord Irwin to repeal the tax law, he chose to defy it and led 78 Satyagrahis in a 240-mile march from his Sabarmati ashram to Dundee, and on April 6, 1930, produced salt from the Arabian Sea, thereby breaking the law. This march inspired millions of Indians to break the salt tax in a non-violent way, and the world began to closely follow India's struggle for independence. Throughout the next decade, India continued to use non-violent methods to protest against the British rule. On August 15, 1947, India gained her independence, proving to a watching world that Satyagraha was and is an effective method of resistance. Since Gandhi launched his Satyagraha principles in South Africa, his campaigns have become the blueprints for struggles of freedom and rights across the world. Through fasts and protests, Gandhi called on the people to transcend over religious and caste differences, focusing on Hindu-Muslim unity and the oppression of untouchables in the Hindu caste system. The true Satyagrahis earned self-respect and respect from the world, and their principles inspired both the common people and great leaders. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once wrote, "As I delved deeper into the philosophy of Gandhi, my skepticism concerning the power of love gradually diminished, and I came to see for the first time its potency in the areas of social reform." In addition to Dr. King, other leaders studied and used Satyagraha in their campaigns.
I believed in the 1940s and other years that nonviolence was the best way to deal with the problem of Jim Crow law and segregation and racism in the United States.
The South African anti-apartheid movement under Nelson Mandela was also influenced by nonviolent principles and widely used civil resistance and boycotts. Much like these, nonviolent resistance has impacted many of the more recent revolutions in the world, like the Northern Ireland religious struggle, the color revolutions in Eastern Europe, the Chilean resistance against their dictator, and the Tiananmen Square protests. Occurring in many different forms, Satyagraha has changed the world both politically and socially. Under Gandhi's leadership, the 3-pound tax on South African Indians was removed and their non-Christian marriages were recognized in 1914. India, the crown jewel of the British Empire, gained its independence in 1947. Along with these political changes, Satyagraha also brought about social reforms such as the integration of untouchables in Hindu society. The American Civil Rights Movement abolished the Jim Crow laws and legal segregation, re-established voting rights in the South, and expanded educational and employment opportunities for African Americans. The message of nonviolence movements is made clear to the world with the demise of the apartheid regime in South Africa and the end of communist rule in many countries. Over the last century, Gandhi's Satyagraha techniques have been a great inspiration and have changed the world both politically and socially. The world saw that Satyagraha made the wrongs of the aggressor very apparent and displayed that a moral force can stand up against a mighty empire. Despite the fact that Satyagraha was a radical form of protest for the times, it was embraced and seen effective and immensely influenced society's views of nonviolent resistance. Through its practice, countries have been decolonized, democratized, and desegregated. As Cecilia Bach, the editor of Gandhi's autobiography, wrote, "There is nothing new about the ideals of truth and nonviolence. They have long been stressed in every major moral and religious tradition. Nevertheless, he did have something utterly new to teach the world about them, how to implement them on a large scale in the practices of nonviolent but forceful resistance, for which he coined the word Satyagraha."